Yes, folks, hello, welcome once again to Monetary Games and Collectibles. It's time for another action figure review here on the channel. And as you can see on the screen in front of you right now, today's installment is going to be taking a closer look at the new G.I. Joe Classified Series Ninja Force Scarlett and T'J Bang set. So stick around, I'm going to give you all the ins and outs, ups and downs that you need to know about this pair. So if you've been thinking about picking up the set for yourself, you'll have good, thorough information to make a purchase decision around. We'll kick things off by jumping back in time and visiting past Chris, taking a look at the packaging on the day it arrived on my doorstep. Then we'll get into the figures themselves, talk about the aesthetic and the visual experience, talk about the articulation and the posability, discuss the accessories and how much added value they bring, compare them next to a couple of other G.I. Joe Classified Series sets, and give you a little 360 view. And with all that said and done, you should have plenty of information to know whether these are the guys you want to crack your wallet and purse open for. So let's get into it, and let's jump back in time to visit past Chris, taking a look at the box on the day it arrived. Here we go. Okay, folks, well, here is the G.I. Joe Scarlett and T'J Bang Classified figures in packaging, and as you can see, it's the standard G.I. Joe Classified Series 2 figure pack that we've seen for a while. So we've got the kind of carbon fiber motif going on, the logo across the bottom, the Ninja Force logo on the side here with the G.I. Joe in the background just to indicate, you know, which affiliation they are, the name in the top corner, and then of course the big window across the middle showing off all the goodies. And on the back we can see that they're 212 in the line. We've got the digital render here showing them in action poses, repeat the Ninja Force logo, a couple of breakaway windows showing off a few key features, all the legal bollocks and malarkey across the bottom. Here's the import sticker. I've got this off In Demand Toys over here in the UK, who get import stock in. And then the file card information, which normally I'd spend a bit of time on, but because it's a two-pack and I'm trying to keep it slim, I'll just point out that there's lots of like bladed weapons and kicky things because the ninja's in it. Then we have the artwork on the side. Not too bad, this one. Actually, quite like this one. Pretty nice little action shot. Scarlett's looking pretty good at the bottom there. T'J Bang's looking suitably serious and ninja-y. And then on the other side, it's all the repeat information along with the QR code to nowhere. So there we go, folks. There is the G.I. Joe Classified Series Scarlett and T'J Bang in packaging for the minting box, folks. But as you well know, if you're regular around these parts, I'm not minting box. I'm going to crack these bad boys open, get good and hands-on with some man-child playtime, pose them up, get them into some displays, see what they look like next to a couple of other G.I. Joe Classified Series figures, and jot down a few review thoughts. So stick around. We'll get into the review section of the video, and I'll share those review thoughts with you in 3, 2, 1. All right, folks, well, we're going to move into the review section of the video now and kick things off by talking about the aesthetic and the visual experience. And I'm going to begin with Scarlett here. Here's a full head-to-toe view of the figure just to kick things off. And as you can see, a fairly heavily vintage figure-inspired design, but it has been upgraded. It has been given some more kind of classified style details over what the vintage figure had. Certainly some of the core basics are there in terms of the visual identifying features. You know, the dark green on top of the lime green is present and correct. The lime green on this figure in the classified version as well. They've not shied away from the brightness of the colours. So unlike Ninja Force Zartan, where they sort of dulled it down a little bit, she's pretty aggressively green there. We've got the armoured shoulder plating present and correct, the green braces, the kind of design on the front of the shin guards is very similar to the sort of design on the vintage figure, at least as memory serves. But they've strayed away a little bit. You know, they've added in the sword sheath, kind of sword sheath. They've moved the location of these little kind of tassels hanging down. They've added extra bits in like the elbow pads and just giving it a little bit more depth. And the leotard design is different because if I remember right, the vintage figure had a kind of like a lacy trimming thing going on. Also up top with the head, they've gone with the hairstyle from the vintage figure as well, although again upgraded in the 6-inch plastic form. So it's the ponytail design and not the massive 90s hair from the Ninja Force Scarlett that appeared in the comic book. I must admit, as a kind of 90s comic book nerd, I lament the the loss of the big hair. They should have gone down the corridor and got some advice from their Marvel Legends friends who do big 90s hair. But in any case, let's zoom in a little bit. We can see the head sculpt's nice, good facial features, good sculpted in features there, nice paint applications on the lips, the eyes, the eyebrows, etc. Nice, serious, stern kind of ninja expression going on there. The hair sculpt is nice too, with a little bit of a bang kind of hanging down and some bits down the side. And then you can see it's nicely sculpted, including some earrings on the ears. The ponytail's got a little bobble tying it back, and all that kind of nicely sculpted swooshy details in there. So yeah, lovely head sculpt. And then moving down into the body, you can see the sculpted detail on the armor pieces, which are black pieces of plastic with this kind of gold or brassy sort of look over the top. Bit of a brush on that, I think, a bit of a dry brush on that, because it's definitely got a nice kind of look and feel to it that's not too stark. And she's got the elbow pads as well in the same sort of goldy brass colour with like little studs on them over the top of a black undersection with a strap across the middle with some nice textured detail in it. Then we have this loose bandolier piece across the top in sort of moulded plastic. Got the grenades on the front here. It's a bit stark. I might take that off, to be honest. It's fine, but it just sort of moves around a lot. I found myself posing her up and then, it being up there like that and stuff and things. But it's okay. Adds a little bit more depth and a bit more equipment to her overall aesthetic. And then, as you can see, the leotard piece is in the dark green with the black trimming and stitching in there coming down over the top of her hips. The bracer sections here are in the matching green to the leggings, for lack of a better way of putting it, for the pants. And that's got a nice texture detail in there too to give it some more depth. We have the sword sheathy thing here. Not a big fan of that, to be honest. It's kind of big, chunky, and kind of gets in the way of the overall aesthetic of the figure. It is attached on with like a little pop stud, but as you can see, if you pop it out, if you're not inclined to keep it, you get this big hole in there. Then you've got a plain black belt across the middle, no painted belt buckle. Regulars around these parts will know I'm a fan of a painted belt buckle. And then the aforementioned tassels coming down off the nice sheath. Bright green pants that glow under my lights. There is some sculpted details on those, like a couple of pockets at the top. There is a bit of paint spill you can see on my light green bottom. So just on top of the hip there's a little bit, and then another one around the back I noticed. Where is it? I can't see it now that I'm talking on a hot mic, but it's there. But yeah, very stark, bright green look. And then down into the legs, we've got the padded shin guards in the dark green, matching the leotard at the top, and then the black boots behind, again with some nice textured detail in there to give it some depth and character. The shoulder pads are attached on. I'll revisit this when I do the articulation, but the way they're attached on is in the joint. So aesthetically, when you're moving the arm around, get it in focus. Aesthetically, when you're moving the arm around, it doesn't affect the kind of look of the way that this drapes down over the top, because it's got a bit of motion and it moves with the arm. Around the back here, I don't know if you can see on the arms, I've got some I don't know if these are sculpting lines along here, whether they're intentional. It does look like maybe there's a bit of a zip on them, that the braces are attached with a zip, or whether it's sculpting lines, but there's these kind of very distinctive lines on the underside of the arm braces there. Couple of loops in the back of the belt for some weapon storage. I'll revisit that in a minute when I look at the equipment. And you can also see these the molding lines here on the inside of the top of the arms on the biceps. Look, the biceps and triceps, which stands out a little bit too. And there's Scarlett. She's all right. A little rough around the edges in a few places with like those mold lines and that, but overall she's okay. Certainly a nice kind of classified reinterpretation. Well, classified interpretation of the vintage figure, I would say. Not a reinterpretation particularly, because it's largely the same. Certainly not drawing much from the comic books. She's not got the big hand. She's not got like the knee-high heeled boots. Do I remember that right? But the knee-high heeled boots. But I'm sure there's some custom jobs some folks can do out there using a Jean Grey or something from Marvel Legends. But yeah, she's all right. She's all right. Your mileage will vary, I suppose, as I often say about these kind of 90s figures, as to how accepting you are of like how bright and in your face these green sections are, because they are really very bright lime green compared to the more dulled down approach that they took with Ninja Force's Artan. So Scarlett's okay. Let's now take a look at T'J Bang. Here's T'J Bang then, folks, and again, another figure in the set that is drawing heavy inspiration from the vintage figure, albeit with a few little kind of classified version upgrades, but I'd also describe this one as kind of a classified interpretation of the original figure rather than a reinterpretation of the character. So all those kind of key visual identifying features are there. The yellow head mask over the top with the tassels, the padded vest, the yellow padded vest, the blue pants, the yellow shin guards on the top of the boots with the stars on them, the yellowy braces, although upgraded a little bit in the classified form. So yeah, very much from the head to toe look there. Again, drawing inspiration from that vintage figure. The head sculpt's all right. I've got to admit, there's something about the head that doesn't fully sit right with me, and I can't quite put my finger on what it is. But, in terms of the quality of sculpting that's on there, everything's fine. The facial features are good. The eyes are good underneath the mask there through the holes with the eyebrows and the eyes and the paint application. Obviously, then on his mask, they've kind of accentuated the white tiger motif that's painted on there. Very nice with a little bit of additional paint application on the top there. Shapes and contours in the mask are good over the top of his ears, and then you can see this little section here where it's kind of stretched at the back, giving it some texture detail. And then the straps with the tie knot and the extra tassels dangling down, and these have got some nice sculpted details, some texture details in them too. So fundamentally, everything's all right with it. I can't quite put my finger on it, but something doesn't fully sit right with me on it, and I can't figure out why, but there you go. His vest is textured too, with the sculpted in Artiiculation symbol on the front, which is an edition, a classified edition, beyond the vintage figure, but that's all sculpted and textured in there. And then you've got the leathery looking straps going over the top, and then just with like a little kind of strap piece around the back here. Then into the pants, you can see the texture detail in the pants and the pockets and the, the little creases and folds and stuff bunching up around the middle here where his knee pads are, bunching up over the top of the boots, some creases and whatnot around the groin area. He has got a black belt across the middle, no painted belt buckle, no extra details on these pouches, but they are all sculpted in nicely, and they have taken the time to paint the belt loops in, which I'm always appreciative of, although again, a bit of paint spill on this one, so there's a bit of blue on the belt on where these two belt loops are. They've accentuated this little kind of thigh piece with these canisters on them. I don't know what they are, someone let me know in the comments down below. These were a lot more kind of flush and smaller on the vintage figure, but they are a little bit larger, maybe some kind of smoke grenades or something. And then down into the legs, you can see he's got the yellow knee pads matching the yellow of the top part of the uniform, and then the yellow shin guards with the stars decal or paint applications on them, and a little bit of yellow on front of the boots, and then the boots are just kind of sort of, again, leathery texture effect on those to give it some more depth. Then you have your wrist braces here, again, sort of leathery kind of texture effect on the yellow sections here. I don't know if you can see it very well under my lights, but it's there with a black trim around the edges, and then some extra paint applications and sculpted details, and that comes over the top of his hands here, and then a leathery effect strap on the underside too. Which is nice, and this isn't molded on. You can pop that on and off as you see fit. So T'J Bang's all right too. Yeah, it just depends. Again, I suppose your mileage will vary depending on how much you want these kind of 6-inch versions, these 6-inch interpretations of the vintage figures or not. But again, they've added a little bit of kind of classifiedization where they can, but where they've chosen to give it a little bit more depth and bring it to life more in the 6-inch plastic form. So he's okay. Just like I say, something about his head just doesn't quite sit right with me. If anyone can figure out a way of articulating what it is that's not looking or feeling right about that in the comments down below, I'd welcome the contribution. But I think Scarlett and T'J Bang together visually, I'm going to give him a thumbs up, despite some of the rough bits around the edges on Scarlett. I'm a weird, unsettled, uncanny feeling around the head on T'J Bang. I like them. They're out there. They're really speaking kind of 90s, in-your-face, bright-coloured Joe, which appeals to me greatly. So, my mileage is far on that front. So, yeah, I think I'm going to give them a thumbs up, but with those kind of small prints and caveats for those of you who may feel differently. Okay, well, there's the aesthetic. Let's now take a look at the articulation on the figures, shall we? And as always, folks, I say before I do the articulation section of the reviews that this is pretty routine G.I. Joe Classified Series articulation we got on both these figures here. So if you already had a classified in hand, both a female figure and a male figure, and you know what's the what, less interested in this section, I'll put timestamps in below, jump ahead to the next chapter and take a look at the accessories and added value section of the review. However, if this is the first G.I. Joe Classified Series review you've ever watched, or you're interested to know if there's any particular quirks, stick around, I'll talk you through it, and I'm going to get started with T'J Bang here. And up top in the head, T'J Bang's got a ball in the base of the skull, ball in the base of the neck. His forward goes down that far, his back goes up to there, all the way around, full 360, and then you can move the head around on the ball. As you can see, these tassels get in the way a little bit, but it's all fine. We're down into the shoulders and the arms. You've got the butterfly joint there for a bit of shuffle back and forward, a little bit stiff on my T'J Bang here. Then the peg and the hinge in the armpit, allowing you to do full 360 and a T-shape out up to there. Swivel at the top of the bicep and tricep. Pinless double elbow that will get you up to there. And then pegged in hands that can move at the wrist, although this bracer gets in the way, obviously, and then up and down hinges on both these grippy hands. Going down into the torso, it's the hinge and the ball joint at the waist. The way the vest fits here, because it's cut slightly higher up, you can get your hinge forward and your hinge back like so, and then pull your swivel and twist in the ball joint area. The hips and the groin are the drop down joints, so you can drop down there, come forward like so. Russian ballet out like that. Good ninja moves there, T'J Swivel here at the top of the thigh. Finless double knee, that'll get you up to there. Boot cut at the top of the boot. And then the hinge and rocker for the feet and ankles. So yeah, T'J Bang moves fine, thumbs up. Just a few minor quirks like the wrist guards getting in the way of the swivel on the hand peg there. So that's T'J Bang. Let's have a look at Scarlett now. And Scarlett also has a ball at the base of the skull, ball at the base of the neck. So her forward is like so. Her up's good, other than the fact that the ponytail obviously gets in the way and the back there, and then tilt and swivel and movement on the ball joint there. And then speaking of the ponytail, that's pegged in here, as you can see. And so you can swivel that around in the peg hole. Go, in whichever your favourite direction is. Going down into the shoulders, butterfly joint, peg and hinge as well. So you've got to shuffle forward and back. Full 360 all the way around, and there's that join where the top of the shoulder pad is in between the butterfly joint and the shoulder joint there, so it moves with the shoulder, and then the hinges allowing you to tee her up to there. Swivel at the bicep and tricep, finless double elbow that will get you up to there, and then pegged in hands that can move at the wrist, and these grippy hands with the trigger fingers on both sides, left and right, have got up and down hinges. Got a barbell joint across the torso there, and a ball joint under the belt line. And so you've got swivel here and swivel there, if you can see, giving you a nice range of motion. The crunch forward and the crunch back's not as good as on the hinge, but it's fine. And we've obviously seen this with female figures in the line before, so lots of range of motion in there. Drop down joint at the hips and groin, giving you a forward kick to there. Russian ballet splits out to there. Swivel here at the top of the thigh. Finless double knee that'll get you up to there. Thigh cut at the top of the boot. And then the hinge and rocker for the ankles and feet. So yeah, thumbs up for Scarlett as well. She articulates fine. No issues when I was taking some photos yesterday in terms of what my imagination wanted to do and articulating her up. The barbell joint is a little bit more limited than the hinge, but it looks nicer. So there's your trade-off there in terms of the aesthetic advantage that brings. The only thing I noticed, the only observation I wanted to share is that she's not a fantastic independent stander sometimes. As we've noticed, or certainly I've noticed, and I'm sure some of you guys have, with some of the other female characters in the past, these kind of smaller feet with the slightly curved shape on the sole makes it a little difficult to get them to stand independently, particularly when you're trying to find a sort of little center of gravity here to make sure that she stands upright. So it's a bit of a fiddle, and you have to sort of mess around with the feet to get them just right. But other than that, all good. Thumbs up for both of them. Articulate and pose, fine. So there you go. There's the articulation and posability. Let's now have a look at their accessory selection, shall we? And let's get started with the head swaps. And as we can see here, Scarlett's got this kind of feminine style Oni mask. Or is it Hanya? Apologies to any Japanese viewers for the butchering of the pronunciation, but I think the female version is called a Hanya, if my Japanese folkloric memory is correct, which it probably isn't. But this is really cool looking. Yeah, it's got this nice kind of black mask with the kind of gold chin and lips across the bottom, the big gold horns at the front, the green eyes, making it a little bit more intimidating with some further gold trimmings on there. Then she's got her hair held up in a knot at the top here, sticking out, and the little black ears at the back. So yeah, really nice little different look, different feel for your Ninja Force Scarlett with this sort of Oni mask thing going on. It does feel a little small overall, like the look of it on the body feels a little smaller than a normal head, but still pretty cool for something different in terms of the way you might pose, or something different in terms of the way you might photograph the character. And then, as you can see, T'J Bang's got a head swap as well in this white tiger mask, which is really lovely. Lots of flavour here, obviously leaning into the paint applications they put on his standard face mask, but also because he uses, I think they're called tiger claw swords. So, yeah, really nice, lovely sculpt here. Got the nice paint applications for the tiger stripes, but also in the eyes, and then you can see like the teeth and the tongues there in the mouth. Lovely sculpted detail here around the side of the tiger's jowls, and then across the back, you can see the rest of the black face mask pulled tight, and the straps holding it in place with some tie wraps at the back there. And speaking of T'J Bang swords, here they are, the tiger claw hooked swords. Nice piece of sculpted sword weaponry. And as you can see, we've got the metallic paint application on these, which I'm very pleased to see because I felt like the stuff in with Slice and Dice was a bit too plasticky. What I will note, though, is that I've had this set for just a couple of days, and as you can see, I'm already getting some paint chip here on the blades after, you know, obviously I've been playing with them and taking photographs with them and stuff for a couple of days now, and I've already got paint chips. But still, yeah, nice looking piece of weaponry. Got the black handle here with sculpted details, and then this kind of spiky punch fist guard bit, which is nice to see. The other sword is matching. However, what they've also got is a couple of pegs and peg holes across them both, so you can fit it together to look more like the traditional sword. Now, mine don't fit together so great because this peg down here is a little bit warped, a little bit bent. There you go. It is possible to do if I just sort of bend it back into shape. So, yeah, lovely piece of kit there for T'J Bang, and obviously in line with the sword selection that he got in the vintage figure. No on-figure storage for this, at least not that I could figure out. I wondered if there was something we could do at the back there, but no. So if it is possible to do, and I'm just not sussing it out, then someone let me know. But sadly, no on-figure storage for these. I'd like the way to be able to fit them to his back, to be honest. And Scarlett has a sword as well. Not a typical ninja katana, but something a little bit more interesting. It's probably got to name this. And a specific origin, so someone help me out in the comments down below on that. Also getting a little bit of paint chip here. Stay still, Scarlett. Also getting a little bit of paint chip here down at the base where I've been sliding it in and out of the sheath. But we do have the metallic paint application on the blade section. You can see it's got the contour details for the sharp and pointy bits and what have you. And then this lovely handle that's been sculpted in with the brass cap at the end. This does have on-figure storage. I mentioned the sheath before, but I'm not a fan of it, folks. It's got this little pop stud over the top bit, but you can slide it in and out without having to pop that loose. But yeah, it seems quite big and bulky here and doesn't sit very well on her. You have to sort of spin it in that hole to sit a little bit better. It's kind of a bit bulky and in the way. And Scarlett has two sort of throwing knivey things. At least I think that's what they are. These are fine single piece of molded plastic with the nice contoured shape for the blades, and then the sculpted handle with the little loop across the bottom, the little finger loop. No paint application on the blade though, which is a shame, a bit inconsistent to the rest of the figure. But these are okay, yeah, you know, and just another depth of kind of options that you can use for posing your figure. And I showed you the loops for these on the back a little earlier on. But I believe these are intended to slide into these little loops on the bandolier belt across the back there, like so. Then we have this kind of sort of sickle weapon here, which is fine. Painted metallic blade part at the top. So yeah, appreciative of that. Nice sculpted handle, which is consistent with the handle on here, and then the little loop at the bottom. No chain included with it though, no chain, because I think this is like a throwing weapon, isn't it, on the end of a chain traditionally, he says, with his limited knowledge from Kill Bill. Yeah, this is fine, you know, again, another bit of flavour, adds another option, a little bit of choice for how you might want to pose and display T'J Bang. Then we have these long tiger claw pieces, Teko Kagi, here, which are, you know, another kind of dimension, another layer to your choice in terms of how you might want to pose them. Both figures can obviously use these. You've got a kind of grip handle for the hands, the long 3 curved claws across the top, some sculpted detail there in at the bottom as well. Where they're all sort of bolted together. Not painted though, all in the black plastic, and we've got 2 of these. The main thing about these really is that they're quite difficult to get T'J Bang to use them effectively because of the braces on the back of his hands. So you have to sort of take those off to make good use of these. But then when you put them on Scarlett, they just look enormous on her, absolutely massive compared to her smaller feminine hands. And they just make her arms look really long. So I must admit, I've not been using these a great deal, but they are at least a bit of choice and added a bit of flavour. And while we're on hand claws, there's this smaller, shorter one that's included in the set with this kind of more kind of rubbery ring across the bottom with some sculpted detail in, and then the 3 claws across the front. Again, no paint application on the blades, sadly, but some nice sculpted detail in there. And it's the same sort of commentary on this. Unless you take the bracer off T'J Bang's hand, I found it a little bit difficult to get these in use. And then Scarlett's smaller hands mean that if you kind of put the grip of it around her hand, it doesn't fit very well. So I think the intention with this loop is to pop her hand out and then, you know, kind of put it more around the wrist area or sort of looped around the hand as a whole. At least that's been my experience of posing her up with it. But again, just adds another dimension, another set of options to how you might want to pose and display them. And then last but by no means least, each of the two characters comes with some hand swaps. We've got a closed fist version of each of the left and right hands for the figures. And I'm always a fan of the hand swaps. Nicely sculpted, good and proportional with the rest of the figure. And again, opening up your options for how you might want to pose and display them. No, it's definitely an interesting accessory selection as far as added value goes. I think, yeah, it's pretty decent. The head swaps are nice. They give it an extra layer, something a little bit different to do in terms of the way that you display or photograph your figures, which is also consistent with the way that they've behaved with other ninja type characters in the line. Some added ninja weapons, martial artsy weapons to add to the bits box that you can use not just with these guys, but you know, across your collection. That's fine. There are some minor niggles. I'm not sure all these hand claws are quite pulling it off. And T'J Bang's lack of weapon stories, like not even a hook to hang his sickle from at the back there or something, seems like a little bit of a miss to me. But overall, it's good. I'm probably going to give it a thumbs up, kind of knock it down to about 10/10 because of those kind of minor pieces of feedback. But overall, it's solid, yeah. So there we go. Okay, well, there's the accessories and added value. Let's now take a look at this pair next to a couple of other G.I. Joe Classified Series figures, shall we? And of course, when you're doing ninjas, your figure comparison has to include an obligatory shot of Snake Eyes. I've gone with the V4 version to go with this pair, although obviously everyone's got their fingers crossed for a Ninja Force version of Snake Eyes coming down the pipeline in the more traditional look with the blue trimmings. Here's the pair of them with Slice, also armed with his tiger claw swords, which you can see are much smaller, much more plasticky, and less intimidate than T'J Bang's. Here they both are with Dawn Moreno, you know, mixing up my eras of ninjas from the Real American Hero comic. Here they both are with Ninja Force Zartan. You can certainly see how they've kind of subdued Ninja Force Zartan's colour scheme a little bit more than this pair. Apologies for Scarlett being out of focus. I've had to line them up a bit funny. And finally, here they are with a mainline Night Creeper figure. Okay, folks, I've got them going around on the turntable there, so you can take a quick look at the figures. And while you're eyeballing that, I'll offer up some final thoughts. And yeah, it's okay. It's a solid set. It's a solid set. I have to admit, I have to confess, despite the positive tone of the review, I've been a little less wowed with them than I thought I might be when I laid down the pre-order. But I think an element to that is that they've come at the same time as Destro and the Despoiler. Spoiler alert, or dispoiler alert, that's going to be the next review. And I found myself, as over the last couple of days, as a desk selection of figures, I've been playing with Destro a little bit more. Certainly yesterday, I was playing with Destro a little bit more than I was with these guys. So I think that's just, you know, they've been cursed by that G.I. Joe Classified Series problem where you get loads of stuff all at once. Because it is a solid set. If you like ninjas, if you like brightly coloured 90s G.I. Joe, then what's not to like, you know, which is 2 ticks for me. So overall, yeah, good. They're great. Nice to see the kind of ninja roster getting fleshed out a little bit more. Need a nice Billy now and Dojo to come along to fill out the numbers even further. So yeah, there you go. That's my take on it. I probably would recommend this, but only, as I say, if you're kind of into that brightly coloured later era of G.I. Joe. Otherwise, you'll just find the color scheme just kind of grossly offensive on the eyes. All right then. So thanks very much for watching. If you did find that useful and it did help you make a purchase decision, then hit all those YouTube buttons that help a brother out. In the meantime, all that remains to say is thanks very much for watching. I hope you come back around again for another video sometime soon. Now go away and have yourselves a great day. Have yourselves a great week, and I'll catch you next time. All right. Take it easy, folks.